All right, hi guys. We are going to review for the Algebra 2 test. So this is our study guide. I'm just going to go through it and you guys can get some good practice. Okay, so let's start with the first one. It says graph the following functions, then write its equation in all three forms. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to write it in all three forms because it's easier for me to graph it once I have all the information that I need. So let's figure out where the vertex of this function is. Well, remember that to find the axis of symmetry, I have to do negative b over 2a, and that's going to give me my axis of symmetry. Well, b is negative 2, so I have the opposite of negative 2, which is positive 2, over 2 times a, which is 2 times negative 1. So I end up with 2 over negative 2, which is negative 1. Okay, so all of that work, it's just taking a minute, there it is. All of that work is just to find the axis of symmetry. And the axis of symmetry is the x coordinate of our vertex. So the axis of symmetry is negative 1. So that means my vertex is at negative 1 something, right? Because it's a point on a graph. So it's at negative 1 something. So I have to figure out what that something is. And to find that something, what I do is I plug negative 1 back into the function. So I say when x equals negative 1, what does y equal? Well, it's negative times negative 1 squared minus 2 times negative 1 plus 8. And negative 1 squared is 1. This is where everyone messed up. So you square the negative 1 first, and then you multiply it by the negative. So we have this is negative 1 plus 2 plus 8. And that gives us 9. So our something, when x equals negative 1, y equals 9. Okay? So if I have my vertex, then I can just write it in vertex form. So let's see, that would be f of x equals, now remember vertex form, let me get some more space here. I'll just write down here for now. Okay, vertex form is f of x equals, I'm going to kind of plug in some things here. A times x minus h plus k. Okay, actually that's probably right behind my head right now, isn't it? Okay, this is vertex form. It'll take a second for it to think and get up there. Okay, vertex form is f of x equals a times x minus h plus k. And so basically you see all the things that are red, those are the things that we are going to replace. Okay, everything else stays in there. It's part of the equation. So what is h and k? Well, remember h is the x coordinate of our vertex. So up here, if I'm going to write it, we have x minus, well, we're going to say plus 1 because x is a liar. So if we want it to have a coordinate, an x coordinate of negative 1, we put a positive 1 there. All right, and then plus 9, that's our, k is our y coordinate of our vertex. And then the only thing we have to add in there is our a value. So what should be a? Well, the a value is the same for standard, vertex, and intercept. So if it has a negative 1 a value in standard form, it's going to have a negative 1 a value in vertex form as well. So that's our vertical stretch. So here, this is our vertex form of that. Okay, now we do intercept form. And remember, intercept form, the other name for intercept form is factored form. So that means we just factor. Okay, so let's look at this up here. We had, I'm going to rewrite it. Negative x squared minus 2x plus 8. All right, now here's the problem. We have this number in front of x, and if we have a number in front of x, then we have to use slide and divide. So let's see if we can get rid of that number in front of x first so that we don't have to slide and divide. Well, let's divide everything by -1. So I just divided everything in my function by -1. So now I have a -1 on the outside, and I can just factor the inside. So I need something that multiplies to -8 and adds to 2. Well, that's -4. Oh, no, +4 and -2. So then I can write this in factored form, x minus 2 and x plus 4. And I still have that -1 outside. So this is intercept form. So now this just tells me a lot about it. So I have standard form, I have intercept form, and I have vertex form. So now I know the intercepts and the vertex, right? So I come over here to graph it, and I know that my vertex is at -1, 9, because I can see that from my vertex form. So I'm going to have to count by 2's here, and this is super important. You label your graph if you're going to count by 2's so that we know what everything is. All right, we're going to go to -1, +9. That's going to be right up here. Then we're going to have intercepts of +2 and -4. So if you look at this right here, intercept form tells us what our intercepts are. So this says, this factor tells us that our intercept, oh, that's probably behind my head, I forget this. Okay. This factor right here, x minus 2, it tells us what our one of our intercepts is, and remember x is a liar, so if it says x minus 2, it's really +2 where it's going to cross, and then it's going to also cross at -4, so that's 2, 4 right there. And then we could graph it with 3, but if you want, the other point that you could find is you could find the y-intercept, and so you can look and see when x equals 0, we're going to use this standard form right here. And we're going to say, okay, when x equals 0, that's 0 plus 2 times 0 plus 8. So when x equals 0, y equals 8. So that means I can graph that point, right? X equals 0, y equals 8. That would be right here. And then I can reflect that same point across the axis of symmetry. And this one's not super precise, but there you go. That's how you graph and switch back and forth between standard and intercept. Okay, let's do the next one. So we're going to graph this one and then write its equation. So again, I'm going to go ahead and do the equations first because then I have information to graph it with. So the first thing I think about is in vertex form, I have those parentheses, right? Parentheses mean I'm squaring something or I'm multiplying something. And the thing is, in standard form, I can't have parentheses. So I need to get rid of that stuff first before I can have it into standard form. So what I would do is here in vertex, I would just, I'm just going to do some multiplication to get rid of that, okay? So I'm going to do it down here because I didn't leave myself quite enough room. So I have 3 x plus 2 squared minus 5. It'll take a second to load. Our internet is super slow today. Sorry about that. Okay. So it's just thinking. It's still thinking. Maybe it will get there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply out the x plus 2's. Oh man. It says disconnected. Let me fix this. All right, I got it working. Okay, so here we have this. We need to expand it, right? We need to get rid of those parentheses, do all of the multiplication and stuff that's in there. So we're going to multiply the x plus 2's together so that we can expand that. So we have x squared plus 2x plus 2x plus 4. So here I have x squared plus 2x, or 4x, we'll just do 4x there, plus 4. That is in right here, everything inside the parentheses. We just multiplied it out, so now that is what should be inside the parentheses right there. So let's just replace it. So now I have 3 times x squared plus 4x plus 4 minus 5. So all I did is the stuff I just expanded, inside this stuff that was inside the parentheses, I just expanded it out. Okay. Now I need to use the distributive property to multiply 3 by each of these numbers. So I'm going to have 3x squared plus 12x plus 12, and I still have the minus 5 there, and now I just combine everything that's the same, because see, I have x's, x squareds, but these ones are constants here, so I can combine those together. So I'm going to have 3x squared plus 12x plus 7. So this right here is the standard form. All I did was expand it. I just did some algebra. Okay, so 3x squared plus 12x plus 7. So that's going to go here. Now I need to do intercept form, and here's the problem. Apparently I was really tired when I made this, and I didn't realize that doesn't factor. So this one we can't write intercept form for. But normally to get from standard form to intercept form, you just factor, okay? But I do know some things about this. I know the vertex, because this vertex form tells me where the vertex is. It tells me the vertex is -2, -5. So I can graph that. 2, 5, okay. There's my vertex. And I also know that it has an a value of 3. See that number here, 3 and 3? That tells me, now remember, when we're graphing a parabola, we always go over 1. And the a value tells us how far we go up or down, okay? Because we always go over 1. So we just go from our vertex, we move over 1, and then we decide how far up or down we need to go from our a value, because it's our stretch, our compression, okay? So here I have my 3 tells me that when I go over 1, I need to go up 3. 1, 2, 3. So I can graph those points right there. Now that gives me 3 points, so I could hypothetically be done. But the other thing that I will look at is my Y-intercept. And so that's the Y-intercept is when x equals 0, what does y equal? Well, when x equals 0, this term is 0 plus this term is 0 equals 7. So actually when x equals 0, y equals 7. So that's like way up here out of, just disconnected me. It's way up there. We can't actually find that one, or we can't actually graph it. So that's okay. No harm, no foul. We have it graphed. So there you go. We'll just connect these points. It's a super skinny parabola, but it's supposed to be, right? Because that a value of 3 tells us that it's really stretched. It's really like skinny. So that's that. I will do a couple more videos with the rest of the problems.